Hello to all you rad people out there from whatever rad time you're watching and whatever rad place. Once again, I'm Ryan.
And I'm David.
And that makes us R-A-D,
Hey,
rad.
rad people.
Today is
Ryan.
particularly rad, isn't it? It's
Oh, dude.
Ryan and David.
It's only us two, and I like when we do this because we always we challenge one another in terms of like just the arts, if you will. And you proposed an interesting thing. What's your top 5, not favorite songs, but albums? And I was like, oof, man, that'd be a tricky question right there, Ryan. I don't know. And I was very interested when I saw yours. Yeah.
That's one of the things that I have been thinking about now for a while is music at one time was very constant. Well, we had a podcast about music, right? And we talked about the fact that physical music meant something different than digital music because it was an artifact and because you bought an album, and that meant that also an artist had to put some kind of thought into creating a unity in an album, right? Instead of just sort of creating songs that may or may not have any connection with each other. And I don't know, I've noticed, I don't want to say that the album is dead, or I don't want to say that nobody makes albums anymore, but it does seem to have changed a lot, the art of making an album, I think.
It's interesting you mentioned that because, like, some of the ones I put on my list, they're quite old, but, like, the number of songs, because of the way that, obviously, a lot of my songs are from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and it's like, well, the CD and the tape were around. You couldn't put, 12 to 15 tracks in an album, but today I hear of, like, artists and they're putting 15 or 18 tracks in an album, and I'm thinking, like, there's probably like 3 or 4 quality songs in there, but the rest you've just, because it's like music that I don't know. What's your take on that?
Interesting. I was listening to, I like to listen to some podcasts that do like really deep analysis of music and different things. And I watched one about the most recent Bad Bunny album.
Oh, really?
And there's 20 songs on it. And the most interesting thing is that all 20 of them made it into, like, I don't know if it's Billboard 100 or it's absurd. Like, it's kind of unheard of, and it's really interesting. I'm not a fan, but like listening to I think anything can be good when you really get into it and take the time to think about it and make connections and stuff like that. And so, while I'm not a big Bad Bunny fan, big bad.
All right, well, boys and girls, without further ado, Ryan and I are going to show you our top 5 favorite songs. Here it goes. All right. Oh, whoops. Okay. And present. As we say, at least what we think, but you may have different opinions. So, drag ourselves up a little bit so that we can see. I'll let you go first and take the number 5, Ryan, right here, because I saw that and I was like, huh? No, yeah, I don't know. Never heard of it.
Okay. Well, then I'm glad that I can spend some time exposing people to new things. This is interesting because, of course, then I created a set of rules and then I immediately broke the rules. But I want to explain why, and I want to explain the idea here. NoFX is a fairly well-known punk band from the Bay Area of California. They've been around since the late 80s, at least. And they're still making music today, in fact. But in 1999, they released NoFX, The Decline. The Decline. It's actually the Decline EP. And for those maybe who aren't familiar with those terms, an EP is an extended play. And so back in the days, even before, I didn't really, again, we've had this conversation before. I didn't really listen to a lot of records, but the EP was sort of a smaller record, whereas an LP was a bigger one. And so a lot of punk bands continued with the tradition of making EPs. And in 1999, NoFX made the Decline EP. And it's interesting because it is actually only one song. So in terms of being an album, it's not maybe strictly an album, but it is an EP, and it is one punk song that is approximately, if I'm not mistaken, like 18 minutes long, which is very strange for a punk song because, yeah, your typical
Yeah,
punk song, a
yeah.
long punk song would be 3 minutes long, you
Yeah,
know?
I'm guessing there's a lot of acoustics in the background for like long periods of time. Sometimes, yeah, like it's not singing and saying stuff all the time, right?
No, no, it's a really interesting song because they've performed it live, and they've worked with orchestras and whole big teams of musicians and everything. In fact, I think they just released last year, they released the 20th anniversary Decline, and they did a live show in the Red Rock Theater, um, Red Rock Amphitheater, which is like a really famous music venue, and they did it with like a full orchestra
Oh,
to do
wow.
the introduction to the Decline. So
Wow.
it's definitely a very different punk
Yeah.
album.
I've been to that Red Rocks,
It's also,
I've been to that theater that you mentioned, and oh my goodness, like, I mean, there's a museum in the back, and I promise you, when you go through the museum, every single major artist that has ever performed and their height of their career, they played at at that amphitheater in Colorado, and it is just stunning because the rocks provide like this visual kind of, no, sorry, this kind of like tunnel of music, actually, because
yeah,
you
that's.
got on the left and the right, and it's like you're just boom, it's right there, and you got the stars in the back. It is I that is the best venue I have ever
And did you actually
seen.
see a concert?
In all honesty, I was there for my cousin's graduation. So not quite, but I was able to, you know, take a stroll through the museum, and wow,
Right.
wow, what a place, honestly, absolutely.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, they do a lot of like live recording performances there as well. It's kind of like the
Yeah.
place to record a
Oh yeah.
concert. So, yeah, so this is a just a very atypical punk song, album, and concept. And musically, it's really interesting because it's varied. It has different tempos. It has different moments. It's almost a, like a punk opera maybe, or something like that. And the subject matter is also really, really, of course, it's very punk, so it's very political. It's questioning, what's going on with society, the decline. Obviously, they don't see things in a very
Yeah.
positive direction. So talking about the way that humans have just gone over time, and I think especially America and democracy. And interestingly enough, it was like I said, released in 1999, which
Yeah.
still puts us in the Clinton years, not even the Bush
Yeah.
years. Um,
No, I'm
they
gonna take a listen
were.
to that. I'm gonna make a note for that and listen to it tonight because I'm very interested about that,
It's
actually.
worth listening to, and even the live. There's a on YouTube you can find the live version as well, and it
Yeah.
is, yeah, it's a fantastic song. So that's,
Awesome.
I had to choose it for number 5. Oh, plus when I bought it on CD, and
Okay.
the CD was so cool because the art on the CD, like the paint on the CD, was only in the center of the CD because, well, the song, a track on a CD starts in the center and then goes out. So
Yeah.
it was only 18 minutes of music, so I didn't need to use the whole CD. So a lot of the CD was, it's the same image of the kid flying the airplane, but a
Hmm.
lot of it is like clear. And it was the first time that I'd ever seen a clear CD because,
Huh.
again, they didn't use most of the CD to record. So just the art style of it too was also
It's very, very
different,
interesting.
and
Yeah.
yeah, really, really
Very,
good.
very cool.
So
So
tell me about your number 5.
my number 5, Meatloaf. Now I know a lot of people. They're like, "Wait, who is Meatloaf again? Like, is that really his name, Meatloaf?" And it's like, no. For starters, his actual name is Marvin Lee. He's a Texan fella. I mean, just the name Marvin Lee from Lubbock, Texas, right there. You know, he got a good twang, and you know that he knows his way around the banjo and the guitar right there. But I absolutely love Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell. Now, there's a few things that I want to say about this album. One, when I was a little kid and we would do drives and I would take a drive in Spain with my dad, like, you know, okay, sure, most of the CDs were difficult in English, but like my dad would always have this one CD in his car. and we would do a 2.5 hour drive every single weekend out to the countryside to go see his parents. And dude, we would put this in and put it on repeat 2 or 3 times, and we're like, all right, gold, solid. It's like, and I just, that's one part why I had to put this one on here, Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell. And just it's got such a fun, fast pace to it. Above all, the funny thing about this one, all right, so yes, the singer is Meatloaf, Marvin Lee, but the songwriter, and that's the key part, Jim Steinman. Now, Jim Steinman, he is huge today in terms of musicals, all right? He's like very big into musicals, to the degree that in the 90s in New York, he did a musical called Neverland, which was like a Peter Pan musical, essentially. And funny enough, take a wild guess at who Tinkerbell was.
Meatloaf?
Yeah, you bet. Tinkerbell was in the musical, and he was none other than, well, he said, I will be Tinkerbell as long as we do not say Tinkerbell. It needs to be Tink. So the whole musical was like, hey, Tink, where you at? And they just break into musical, into music. But there was that musical in the 90s, and I have a very vague, because I was like 5 or 4 years old, memory of being there. And I do remember Tinkerbell at the very end, like throwing stardust out to the crowd. And I was like, oh. The other really cool thing, now I'm not one for musicals, Ryan, but they turned Bat Out of Hell into a musical in London, and I saw it a year and a half ago. And let me say, I absolutely loved it. I mean, it beats any other musical than Grease. There's an element of rock and fun. And sure, it's like, wait, what's rock and roll doing in a musical? And it's like, well, actually, the way that it was done was just absolutely fantastic, because the musical captures this like punk era versus this like new modernism, and it's these kids who are like the Bat Out of Hell, and they sing it was a absolutely fantastic musical. Loved it, absolutely. But I will definitely say, definitely love Meatloaf here.
And does the album itself have some sort of like narrative, let's say? Does it I mean, does it have something that kind of glues the songs together? If they were able to make a musical out of it, I guess.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, okay, sure. It's quite a short, there's only 6 or 7 songs on the album in total. And obviously, Bat Out of Hell is like 10 minutes long, but the other ones still like, what is it? Heaven Can Wait is on there, and For Crying Out Loud, or I will do anything for love, but I won't do that. And that's like the finale of the musical. But oh man, we may be turning today's podcast into quite a theatrical show. I might be singing.
It could turn into a musical. Yeah, I don't know. It depends. We have very diverse tastes in music. It's interesting, but and mine always tend to be, I don't know, so obscure. I know. I'm sorry, not a lot of people follow.
I don't know. I kind of went with like stuff that I would listen to on any day, just like, but obviously we did that podcast on music taste, and that whole podcast on music taste is like, well, I can listen to anything on any given day, and that's true, but I kind of chose a few that I was like, no, I can listen to this and just enjoy it, and anytime. But I don't know, in terms of narrative for the whole album, it's kind of about breaking loose, breaking the norms, and fighting for yourself, if you will. And fighting for love, which is what the finale song is. Absolutely love Meatloaf.
Nice. That's too funny that Meatloaf played Tinkerbell, though.
Oh, as long as we got to be called Tink. He didn't like Tinkerbell. He wanted to be called Tink. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at number 4, and I'll take the lead on this one. Now, Aerosmith. I mean, Steve and Tyler, where would we be without Aerosmith? Let's be honest, right? Okay, so sure, Aerosmith came out after Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, and Black Sabbath, for me, many people have their own opinion. Who was the fire starter of hard rock? And I often think of, when I think of hard rock, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath. Those were like the predominant ones that paved the road for everyone else to follow. But
Right.
for me, Aerosmith, what makes them a little bit different for one of the founders is that they kind of introduced, I think the genre that they talk about is called cock rock, which is like rock and roll, sure,
Yeah.
but references to illicit activities in many ways, which is what Aerosmith's, song Toys in the Attic kind of introduced. It was like, these are references to illicit activities that we have going on. And, there's a few references in some of the songs right there, like Sweet Emotion, to take the high road, or Go Away, Go Away. Those are some of the songs, but in many ways, Aerosmith, I think, yeah, sure, they're in the rock category, but they're in this like subgenre rock category because the previous rock heroes and, people that started rock and roll, they didn't talk about, doing illicit activities or breaking stuff or being a little bit crazy in the world. There was more like, this sense of talking from here, not talking about actions. And that's
Right.
what Aerosmith, the genre cock rock, is essentially in reference to your actions when you listen to rock and roll. Yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of the weird things is like I feel like being born in the 80s, like we were just sort of gifted music, for
Yeah.
instance, that broke a lot of rules, right? I mean, rap was already pretty well established then, and but at least by the late 80s, NWA had come out with Straight Outta Compton and all of that stuff.
True.
And so, like, for instance, bad words. But like, if you go back into the music catalog, music from the 60s and before, people didn't use bad words in music, right? I mean, that was a big no-no. I've always kind of wondered, and I've never done the research. Who was the first like real band to start using bad words?
Hmm.
I know, for instance, that the Doors had a very controversial performance. It's depicted in the Doors movie
Yeah.
where he used the F word, and he was actually like removed from the concert because you weren't allowed to do that. And so,
Huh.
but I mean, today it's like just taken for granted
Dude,
that you can use
everyone.
bad words
Yeah.
in music, right? But to
Because
kind of be
it
a
has that
pioneer.
explicit, stamp on it, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that was a big battle in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, I remember. Am I right in saying it may have been Al Gore's wife, I think, who was spearheading that movement? I believe I'm
Yep,
right in saying that, right?
yep,
Yeah.
yep. The oh, God,
Sharon
what's the
or
organization called?
Sherry Gore, I think, something with Sharon or Sherry,
Tipper,
something like that.
Tipper
Yeah.
Gore. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. That's it. So,
Exactly. So
yeah.
yeah, it's interesting to see like at what point did just certain things become acceptable, and I've always kind of had that question in the back of my mind. Who was the first, let's say major commercial artist to
Hmm.
use bad words in a song? And to be honest, I guess we'll have to leave that one for researchers.
I don't know. Would it be safe? Maybe like, okay, for example, the first one that was demoralized when kids were listening to it and parents were like, "What are you listening to?" Elvis Presley? I mean, in the
Well,
50s, people were like, "What's this man doing?
sure.
Moving his hips like that on television? Like, how dare he?" Right? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
No,
Yeah,
I think music has always pushed the frontiers, right? Of what's of
yeah,
what's acceptable, what's possible. But that one is a big question in my mind. Who was the one who broke that rule? Who broke that rule, and how did they get away with it? Because anyway, by the time I was, at least conscious and aware of things, bad words in music were just it was normal, you
yeah,
know.
yeah. No, true, true,
I
very
don't know.
true. Huh.
Well, speaking of bad words,
Okay.
um,
Oh,
MF
oh,
Doom.
yeah.
MF Doom is a rapper. I was actually doing a little bit of research this morning, and I just found out that he was born in London, but lived most of his life in New York City, and grew up. He created a small group with his brother in the late '80s, I believe, but his brother passed away tragically, and so he was sort of like reborn as MF Doom. and he's really cool because he's a character. He always wears a mask. So this mask that's kind of shown in the art there is
Hmm.
similar to the mask that he wears. It's a metal mask, and MF Doom stands for Metal Fingers Doom. So he was always a producer and a DJ. So he's got like metal fingers. He's got a metal face. He's takes on the persona of a villain. So Doom from the like the Fantastic Four is the villain. He always uses samples from comic book like superhero movies and like the Justice League and stuff like that. So it's really fun to listen to just because he sources all of this interesting
Oh,
material. But
very
I
cool.
picked this as an album because his album is called Food. And
Mm.
so the first thing to notice about Food is that it is an anagram of his own name, MF Doom. So
Oh,
all of the
yeah.
letters in Food are all of the letters that make up MF Doom. And Doom made this album. Well, I mean, it's not really that hard to tell what it's about. Every single song on the album is titled and revolves around food. And so he has such interesting song titles as Rap, Snitch, Knishes. Uh, so where he talks about all of the people in rap who will reveal the sources of some of the samples and things like that. And so as a concept album, Food is a really great introduction into MF Doom. And all of MF Doom is pretty amazing. Like the guy has a really unique way of using language. He's definitely not conventional. He's
Yeah.
definitely weird. It's weird rap, and it's awesome. He's really great, and Food is a fantastic album, and so that's why I picked it for my number four.
Oh, I like that. I like that. And in fact, I was going to ask you very quickly. So he's from London, but I'm curious. The way that he raps, is the melody very quick? Like, because that's one thing I've always noticed with English rappers is that they'll be quite quick in terms of their spitting. Like Dizzy Rascal, for example, he's a rapper in England, but he
Yeah.
just spits at such an incredible. And I've also seen like people freestyle in London sometimes, and the beat is always a very quick. You know, like as if the words are attached to each other from start to end. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. He has a very unique flow as well, and I would almost say that he's sort of he's kind of anti beat. Like he likes to do, I think it's called, like, I'm not a musical expert, but I think it's like syncopation. So he'll sometimes hit his rhymes on the offbeat. um he'll sometimes, a lot of his rhyme, he likes to pack a lot of the rhymes into the middle of a line instead of the end. He's really like no other. In fact, and fast, yeah, I would say, relatively fast, not specifically fast, but there's a great video of the rapper Most Def, who's a really well-known rapper, um, where he's just expressing like his appreciation for Doom, and it's one of the best videos. You can easily find it on YouTube. Just Most Def talks about MF Doom, and he knows all of his lines by heart, and then he'll start like saying, he can't believe that MF Doom is able to say some of the things that he says and do some of the things that he does with language. He's just so unique and pretty special. And yeah, Doom, check it out.
No, no, fantastic. We'll do. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, next one up, we've
Onwards.
got, all right.
Well, I almost felt cliche in picking it, but this is, for those of you who don't know the Image, Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. And if we want to talk about albums as albums, I mean, this is pretty important. I'm not gonna pretend to be a Pink Floyd expert. To be honest, I'm gonna be very honest. I hated Pink Floyd for a really long time. I think I was like 25 when I finally was able to sit down and listen to Pink Floyd, and then I was like, wow. And specifically Dark Side of the Moon. And I was
Mm.
just blown away. I was like, wow, this is really, really cool. I was so close-minded. And so really, I don't know. What I want to say about it is the following. There's of course this famous kind of urban myth or something like that that the Dark Side of the Moon is an album that you can actually like sync up with a movie. So if you've ever
Yeah.
seen the movie Wizard of Oz, one of the famous things that the kids in the 70s used to do was put on Wizard of Oz and then put on the Dark Side of the Moon.
Hmm.
And I've been lucky enough to witness this. And I was at Burning Man, and a camp at Burning Man decided to do this one night. And so they showed the Dark Side of the Moon. Sorry, they showed Wizard of Oz, and they played the Dark Side of the Moon. And I don't know. I'm not gonna fall too deep into the whole theory, but it was a cool experience, and there are some moments where things happen, and you're like, whoa, that was interesting. Do I think it was intentional? Not really, but I think it's an interesting thing. And then besides that, just as a concept, the Dark Side of the Moon is is amazing because again, it's a band that takes sort of a narrative throughout an entire. I believe there's 10 songs on the album, and but it works through the whole thing. And so as a concept, Dark Side of the Moon is, I don't know, pretty essential, I guess, when you're talking about
Dude, I
albums.
think people need to, like, if you have not heard Dark Side of the Moon in your life, I think it is a must listen. Like, if there is a, I mean, obviously we've put our top fives, but if there was a list that we did in terms of must listen albums, I would 100% put Dark Side of the Moon on there, honestly. There's
Absolutely.
so many lyrics and just key elements in Pink Floyd songs that you just have to like listen to and try and grasp the message that's trying to be displayed in it.
Yeah.
I mean, the titles of their songs as well. What is it? Speak to Me, or With a Smile, Easy Come, Eclipse, right? These are all just like things that you know is very simple titles, but the words that are said in the songs are so profound with its meaning. I think it's, if there was a list for must listen to songs, I would absolutely put that as like number one, two, or three, no doubt, no
Yeah.
doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well,
Um,
what about you? What did you pick for number
For
three?
me, number three, okay, well, I quite like the success story of Al Green, all right? And he, you know, he's a late 70s songwriter. And I really like this album, Let's Stay Together. And, you know, it's interesting because this album has like of so many different variants of genre of music that in this album of Al Green. Like I can find a little bit of the jazz, a little bit of the blues, a little bit, you know, a little bit of everything, a little bit of the rock in there in that album, honestly. And
Mm.
obviously, the title of it, "Let's Stay Together," that's, you know, the main song that I think it was top of the charts for a long time when I did my research this morning. And one of the things that somebody was saying, it was like it was a unique song for that time period because its melody was ascending and descending at the same time, which is like a risky, you know, kind of like musical output, if you will, where you're changing
Okay.
the beat from fast and changing it to slow. But Al Green is one of the success stories that I've always liked during the 70s. And, you know, I mean, he has more songs and more albums with a small local band than he does with on his own, honestly. But he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't able to, with the band, he wasn't able to take off. So, you know, he found Memphis Records, and Memphis Records kind of like helped him take off. But no, he's I don't know. There's only like 7 or 8 songs. As I mentioned earlier, like a lot of the ones that I chose, there were fewer songs on the album. That way, you know, I was like, well, if I don't like one song, that's okay. But at least there's a majority that I like. Yeah. But
Right. Right.
I don't know. Al Green is just someone that yeah, always intrigued me a lot. Definitely.
Hmm. I can't say that I mean, I'm sure that I've heard him. I just don't
Mhm.
never listened to him specifically, and so I couldn't put my finger on
Yeah.
Let's Stay Together. Sing it for me.
Uh, 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 Okay, it's uh the lyrics don't even have let's stay together. It's
Wait a
da-na-na-na,
minute.
da-na-na-na, da-na-na-na. You tell me now that I will be with you. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Oh geez, oh man, I think
Okay.
I've just turned people off on my number three with my singing, Ryan. Oh geez, if
I
you
won't
just
ask you to do it again.
okay, yeah, if you just heard that right there, just to let you know, listen to the album because what I just gave was absolute garbage from what you can listen to on the album. Oh
All
geez,
right.
this was the one that I didn't have much to say on actually, yeah, with Al Green, but I still like it a lot. Don't get me wrong. The one that I do have a lot to say on, however, is Fleetwood Mac Rumors. I
Okay.
absolutely love this album. Fantastic songs on it. You've got Dreams on there. And you know what's funny? And this is so you know how most, the titles of a lot of albums are tend to be like the number one hit and they put it as a
Yeah.
title?
Yeah.
Title of this, Rumors. And it has an interesting story that I'm happy to share right now.
Do
So,
tell.
so obviously the band of Fleetwood Mac is compromised of, Stevie Nicks, who was going out at the time with the songwriter Lindsey Buckingham. So there's a relationship in the band right there. And then there's the other relationship where you have John McVie, and who was the bass player, with the keyboard artist Christine McVie. Guess what was going on while they're recording this? They're all breaking up. Like all the relationships in the band were finishing. So they were like,
Wow.
you know what? Let's title it Rumors because all we've been doing is recording and then talking about rumors behind each other's backs. So we're going to give the title Rumors. And I
Uh,
find that quite interesting how, that how their function as a group, Fleetwood Mac, kind of gave rise to the title Rumors, sure enough. But no, I mean, I don't know if you've seen pictures of Stevie Nicks back in the day or like her performing live. I have to say, what an absolute, like, if there's someone I want to see live, Stevie Nicks and Janis Joplin are definitely, I mean, rise them from the dead and have them as their zombified fellows just, perform. I would absolutely love to see that. But,
is
in many
Stevie
ways,
Nicks
I
dead?
find it funny. The recording of this was going on during one divorce and during another breakup between Fleetwood Mac between Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham. Yeah. So it's
Wow.
yeah,
Is Stevie Nicks dead?
yeah, Stevie. Oh, geez.
Hmm. I don't
You
know.
know what?
My mom was a huge Stevie Nicks fan.
Yeah,
She had,
yeah,
like those like collectors books with like all her CDs and all of
yeah.
her greatest hits and stuff like that. And yeah, used to listen to a fair amount of Stevie Nicks with my mom, and she is a pretty amazing singer. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. No, fantastic. Love Stevie Nicks, honestly.
Is the chain on this album?
Is what is?
The chain.
Not on this album. No,
Okay.
no, not on
Okay.
this one. I think it's
Just
on the other one. Yeah, I'm not. No, I don't think it's on this one though. No. Hmm.
okay. Okay. Well, I dug back into time as well with this one. I went with Bob Dylan, and I could have easily put this one at number one, man. I mean,
Yeah.
it's Bob Dylan,
And
and particularly for me, this album I find to be one of the most interesting Bob Dylan albums. Again, I don't consider myself by any stretch of the imagination to be a Bob Dylan expert,
mm,
but I get into Bob Dylan, about, geez, again, later in my life. My music tastes have changed a lot throughout my life, but in my early 20s, I started listening to a lot of Bob Dylan, and but the song that got me into Bob Dylan is the first song on this album, which is "Tangled Up in Blue." And to be honest, I heard it on the radio one day. I was working at a pizza place, and I heard this song, and I was like, "This song is amazing," because he's telling this like incredibly complex story, this love story, uh, that stretches over like many different years and different places, and these two people just continue to re-encounter each other. But then I was like, wow, this song's amazing. And I was telling this guy, and he's like, man, you should hear the live versions of this song, because as he performed it, like the song itself kind of evolved, and the characters in the song sort of do the thing that I love the most in books or in whatever. It's that I don't like things that stay solid. I don't like things that are defined. And so what's cool is that the people in the song, as he went performing this song live, the characters would change roles. Sometimes they would change genders. Sometimes he would throw in different events that happened between these two people. It's such a cool song, and it's a song that like you could study. I think you could really get into it and look at how he's talking about these people, how they evolve over time. And then like the next song on the album is A Simple Twist of Fate, which is just an incredible song. And then just today I just said, well, I gotta confirm myself. I mean, Tangled Up in Blue is enough to make me pick this as my favorite album, but then you've got Idiot Wind, which is another really good one.
Dude, we had a nickname for someone, honestly. Idiot Wind. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's blowing in the wind. Yeah, yeah. And it's like, Idiot Wind.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we had a nickname for an old friend.
Every time you move your teeth.
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
Such a good song. He's got this song on this album, which is, I can't really say the name, but it's like the someone, the sheriff and the Joker, or something like that. No, the Jack of Hearts. And it's like this. Plus the songs on this album are all like epically sized. So they're all like over 5 minutes long, and some of them are even get to like 9 minutes. And they're really epic songs. They're I don't know, personally I love them. And then to top it all off, the second to last song, it's not the last song. I always kind of wished it was, but the second to last song is Shelter from the Storm. And I think that song is just
I know. Yeah, I know what you're talking. There's a melody in there that just kind of ties you into it. I know it. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Oh man.
And I guess it's something that he does a lot. Maybe on this album, maybe I never really thought of it before. Kind of like, I mean, obviously in a song you're always going to have the repeating refrain, the chorus, right?
Yeah.
But he uses it so many times, but every time it takes on new significance, like in Tangled Up in Blue, right? Because every verse is, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 lines that rhyme, and then he'll tie the last line into Tangled Up in Blue. And every time he says Tangled Up in Blue, it means something slightly different, but it always works. And the same thing with Shelter from the Storm. He that line, Shelter from the Storm, it works in so many different ways throughout the song. It's really, really amazing. I don't know. I think in terms of songwriting, it's really advanced. It's really...
No, definitely. Bob Dylan, he's surgical with his choice of words through the melody, I have to say. Absolutely.
He didn't win a Nobel Prize in Literature for nothing, right?
True that. All right. So, are we ready to reveal the number one? You ready?
I'm feeling a lot of pressure. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I don't know if I made the right choice. I put Bob Dylan in number 2, and now I'm doubting myself. But let's go for it.
Oh, Aesop Rock. I mean, you've talked about him already on the Rat podcast.
Yeah, I had to do it, man. This guy just, I think that he might be the most advanced user of the English language ever.
Yeah.
Ever. And I know that's a bold statement to make, but I truly stand by it, and I think I could argue about it. Maybe I'd be defeated, but I think that this guy does things that nobody else has done with language, and paints pictures and creates images. And
I love the cover of this. Actually, it's beautiful. Really,
it is. And the whole album has sort of, again, kind of a theme running through it. he's really good at kind of creating these terms and then using them throughout multiple albums even. So like, for instance, he talks a lot about earthworms, and earthworms are kind of like the common man, the worker, the working class, the people who are just sort of constantly digging, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, he uses that metaphor of digging. For instance, the last song on this album is called Shovel. Just so masterfully. And then this album has the song Daylight on it, and I have not yet been able to find something, to me, more sonically beautiful than the song Daylight. I think Blockhead was the producer on this album, and between Blockhead's production and Aesop Rock's voice, which is unique and weird in itself, but the two come together in this song. I gotta say, like, if we were gonna do a top 5 songs ever, I would Daylight might also make it to number 1 because it's such an amazing song, and so that's why Aesop Rock wins my number 1 award.
Yeah, no,
Labor Days.
absolutely. And funny, ever since we did that rap conversation, I've been listening to a little bit of Aesop Rock, and I gotta say, absolutely stunning. Just his verbal output is just unique beyond belief. Absolutely, really, really big fan. Yeah, and I hadn't heard about him until we had that podcast actually. So yeah, really, really happy. Yeah, my number 1, well, put it this way. I had to choose an album, and there is no song on this album that makes my top 10 favorite songs. However, I absolutely love Amy Winehouse. I think she's amazing, and I had to put, her somewhere. The reason, so there was a documentary that came out about 6-7 years ago. It's called Amy. It won an Oscar for the best documentary of 2013 or 2014. And this album is like discussed particularly in depth in the documentary because she wrote her songs during this period of time when she felt in pain and she was struggling in life. And this album is an album about, guilt, grief, infidelity, and heartbreak in many ways. And yet there's something about her voice that has always like clinged me onto listening to Amy Winehouse in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let me read some of the titles that I wrote down right here of Amy Winehouse songs, and in this album specifically. Rehab, You Know I'm No Good, Me and Mr. Jones, Just Friends, Back to Black, Love is a Losing Game, Tears Dry on Their Own, You Need to Wake Up Alone. I know those are like incredibly, dark titles, but at the same time, listening to them, they have like an upbeat nature to them in some way. I mean,
Yeah.
I think Amy Winehouse was like one of the few voices of unique voices that I've ever listened to. And yeah, no, Amy, it's interesting because in the media, and maybe even in history, everyone will say like, no, Amy Winehouse died at 27 because she had a drug problem, because she had alcohol problems, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality that really gets discovered in the documentary is that she used alcohol and drugs to treat her main addiction, which was a love addiction. When she wrote this album, her boyfriend at the time had just gone back into jail. And she was so broken and lost and everything, she didn't know. And she just wrote down like, this whole album during that time period. So it's, yeah, she is someone who I find very interesting in the musical world because, okay, sure, she's part of Club 27, but at the same time, she had such a unique persona in the global world. And, I mean, I used to go out in Camden over there in London when I'd go out with some friends, and you just see like a huge picture of like a graffiti of her on the walls because that was her zone, that was her party area, Camden Town, yeah. But I'm a huge Amy Winehouse fan. Really, really, everything that she's done with music, I think is unique in many ways.
How many albums was she able to put out before she passed away?
She put out 4 total. Yeah, not many. So Actually, wait, no, three. Yeah, Back to Black, Frank, and the third one, which I'm drawing a blank at the name. Yeah, three total. Yeah. So, but this is the one that kind of she was in her place, in a dark place, and she just like put down. I don't know. I sometimes I've heard someone say this, and I don't know. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes the best that an artist performs in terms of like song lyrics and everything is when you're at your bottom, when you're at, you've been broken down. I don't know, I've heard that before, where I can't remember if I saw it on a TV show or maybe a movie, but I can see the relation of sometimes how pain will allow us to put the words down on paper for music. I don't know if
Yeah.
you agree with that. Yeah.
So often it seems like art and creativity is driven by negative emotions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because I think that it shows that art is a way of us trying to change the world. Why do we make it? Because we're unhappy with the way that the world is, and we want to try and adjust the world a little
Yeah.
bit more to our vision of it. And so, yeah,
You phrased it very well right there. I like that. Yeah, no, definitely.
I think that's why there's so much tendency to, yeah, great art comes from pain, from
No,
suffering.
definitely.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, that was it, man. We
Yeah.
did the top 5 albums. That
Yeah,
was
we did 5 albums. And you know what's funny is, like, I sent you my list after you did yours, and there was no crossing over whatsoever. So yeah, I
very
think we
diverse.
definitely very cool. So boys and girls, if you're looking for something new to listen to, you got your list in front of you. Take a
There you
listen.
go.
Ryan and I would love to have you guys listen to it, because you might find some answers during this time of quarantine, definitely, from these albums.
Also, tell us about what your favorite albums are, or do you still listen to albums, or do you just listen to individual songs? That's also the interesting, evolving nature of music these days. So tell us what you think in the comments.
Yeah, definitely. Would love to hear from you guys.
That's
So on
right.
that note, Ryan,
It's
want to take us
another
out?
RAD podcast because I'm Brian.
And I'm David!
And we are RAD Rad.
Rad! So boys and girls, I hope you listen to these albums and have a lovely morning, afternoon, evening, depending on when you're watching this. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.